Great. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the October 17th, 2011 New York City Campaign Finance Board Voters Assistance Advisory Committee meeting. I guess this is in celebration of our pre-Halloween meeting. We have, courtesy of Shauna, a bowl of candy, and if anybody from the public would care to come up and help us out with something, welcome to. But thank you for attending, and thank you committee members. A lot of hard work has happened, and I just, first of all, I just wanted to say that, I just to do the second, but I'm going to do this first, is that Lisa Polson from my office attended a fantastic event, and I think there's some others here who also attended. I just want to congratulate Anita Mayers-Howard and Cheyenne Sapp on a fantastic job they did on the Youth Poet Laureate event. So I heard about that. I'm sorry I couldn't attend, but it seemed like a terrific event. Great effort. So with that, I'd just like to it's time to approve the minutes from our August 1st, 2011 meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Well, we have a lot to report on today. I think that probably will, let's do this cut to the chase. That as many of you know, we have had a working group assisting us on organizing an event that would try to help encourage people of New York to speak out about what they want from voter assistance. What would help them become more involved and engaged in civic affairs, to do the things that they would make the voices heard and to connect with other people. Well, I'm very pleased to be able to officially announce that we now have a date for our first event, which will be hosted by WNYC at the Green Space, and then hosted by Brian Lehrer as part of the Brian Lehrer Show. And the Brian Lehrer Show, together with the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee and the New York City Campaign Finance Board, will present a town hall conversation led by Brian Lehrer to explore the question, why don't you vote? So this will be on November 1st, Tuesday at 10 a.m. from 10 to 12. And there will be public announcements about this, and there will be avenues for every New Yorker to be able to participate in person, online, via the web, webcasting, Twitter, and hopefully Facebook and other means. So I'm very pleased to announce that. So thanks especially to Louisa for all your hard work on this, and to everybody here on the committee who really put a tremendous amount of effort into this. So thank you. Amy, would you like to make a report?
I'm going to, again, commend, and you'll hear in a second a report from Ronita Carameras, but I mean, she and her staff, from few that they may be, have been doing an incredible job, reaching out to voters all across the city in a variety of programs that she'll describe. I just want to report about one thing that will not be, is that we have recruited a group of students from New York University's Wagner School to do an analysis of voting trends, and we hope that this analysis will help the committee and the Campaign Finance Board identify underserved voters and help us better direct our efforts in reaching out to voters in New York City. So that program kicked off last Friday night with a meeting here of that's their capstone project for these students getting their MPA, and it kicked off here on last Friday night, and so we're off to a good start. I think we'll get some very interesting information from this group.
Do you know yet kind of how they're going to approach this? Are they doing a survey model? Did they get to that yet? Or?
I mean, they haven't really gotten that detailed. What they're going to do is they're going to take the voting information that we got from the Board of Elections, data sets, and do an analysis comparing that to census information. And the first thing you have to do is kind of line up election districts and census data, and so that you can normalize the data, and then they're going to do a data analysis based on that, but mostly using the computerized data that we got from the Board of Elections.
I would just mention that they also should tap into, there are a lot of very good election organizations for profit here in New York, and this is an opportunity for them to give back a little bit in terms of sharing some of the resources and data that they have as well. There are some good organizations and they do very well, and this is one opportunity for them to give back to help us understand voting trends and things like that, so we shouldn't leave them off.
No, you're right. We'll look into that, because they're going to do a tentative analysis and give a short term, and then they're going to do a long term. Their final project is in the spring. The complete project is done in the spring. But I know, I think I have an idea of what you're talking about, and without naming names,
Yeah.
but I can, we'll try it and see if we can reach out to those groups.
I figured if the lawyers do it like that, I'm involved in that. I figured
Yeah.
everybody should be volunteering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amy, is there anything else?
No, that's it for me.
I'd like to turn it over right now to a report from our Director of Voter Assistance.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to report that we kicked off our voter awareness season since our last meeting. And I'd like to thank the voter unit staff, the voter assistance unit staff also, and the entire CFB staff for all of their hard work. We had mentioned at our last meeting that we were going to pilot a program in Queens, and we did. We formed a partnership with Queens Public Television. And what we did was we produced and aired a video voter guide on their channels for the city council seat, number 28, the District 28 out there. We also, working with them, produced 4 town hall sessions. One was for Congressional District 9, which I believe at our last meeting, the committee also requested that we expand the scope of what we were doing in Queens. And we were able to go back to the committee and Queens and ask them if they would produce a town hall session for the Congressional District number 9, for Assembly District, and for the 2 assembly races that were happening in Queens. And those were 23 and 27, as well as we did one as well for the city council race. Those were coordinated and promoted through the Queens Courier newspapers, which we did get coverage in the paper also for our work there. Leading up to that, we held a community meeting at the local community board to gain support from the community, who went on and did voter registration drives, as well as get out the vote campaign and attended the town hall sessions as well. Promotions of this and all of our voter awareness work is, you can see on nyc.gov. So under the residence page, the official city page now also carries the work that we're doing and promoting it. Our work with Local Law 29 continues to expand and is doing very well. We are, all of them just about, are using our spotlights, which we have described before. The spotlights are bugs that they can electronically use on their websites, and they can send out to their constituents, reminding people to register to vote and reminding them to go out and vote and participate. So we have a lot of products that we're rolling out to them, and they are using them. So much so now that we're having a second round of meetings with many of them because they're ready to do more. One instance is with the Human Rights Commission, and as they're planning that web movie that we talked about before, they are working with us with the work that we do with the Department of Homeland Security, and they are videotaping us now and the work that we're doing so they can use that as some of their footage. And they sent 2 members of their staff to work with us with voter registration, so they're really getting involved with it, and we're really excited because on that day alone, we were able to register 230 new voters that we submitted on that day to the Board of Elections. The Youth Poet Laureate Program, as you heard from our chair, we kicked off in September at City Hall. It was a great event. We had a conversation about energizing the youth vote, which our executive director, Amy Lopez, participated in. as well as the Department of Youth and Community Development Commissioner Jeannie Mulgrave, the Chief Service Officer for the City of New York, Diane Billings-Bruford, and Councilman Robert Jackson. So it was a great conversation. Chancellor Walcott came in and brought welcoming remarks, and the mayor took a picture with the class of 2012. Earlier that same day, the City Council presented a proclamation to our Youth Poet Laureate, which went really well. So we just want you to know that the semifinals are this Saturday and this Sunday. You are all invited. And the finals will be on November 5th at the Great Hall at Cooper Union, so hope you will join us. The last thing that I will offer is that we are creating an online guide to judicial elections that will be up at the end of the month on our website, as well as we are holding a new citizens celebration with HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, on October 26th that Amy and I will be co-hosting with them. So we have flyers that we'll give out with that for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just actually interrupt? I just wanted to show the flyer, this lovely flyer that, I brag about my staff, that our staff designed with Cheyenne and people from our communications advertising the Youth Poet Laureate that was sent to all the high schools across the city, encouraging students who were not participating but might want to come out and see the semifinals and the finals.
With just one omission. There is no mention of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee on the flyer. We are a parent of the Poet Laureate, and we are omitted once again. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So noted.
So noted.
Okay.
Hope it's the last time. No.
You just raised something that I hadn't thought about,
Can't do
I
it.
must admit at all, in our discussions, that's judicial elections. So, is that part of our mandate?
Well, part of our position in it is that any election, we try to provide voter assistance. So with that, we have a long relationship with the Judicial Campaign Center. And we've been working with them on finding out who are going to be the candidates in November on the ballot. And with the staff here, also, we're going to create this online guide that we will be able to roll out. Now, the only thing about that is they have an extremely short window. So while we'd like to start working on that right now, we cannot until all of the candidates are in, the paperwork is done.
What is that?
It's not completed until October 25th. Yes.
2 weeks before the general election?
Correct.
Wow.
So,
It also, I mean, and this is for a conversation for another point, but we should take it up at some point, but it's an entirely different approach in education when it comes to judicial elections than it comes to non-judicial elections, putting aside the time frame that is really tight. They probably see the lowest turnout besides the old school board elections than anything else. And so at some point we should talk about what's the approach for judicial elections, because that is the forgotten races in the city. But it's a different education, because we've talked about educating people about the value and the importance of voting for elected officials, and then it's a totally different response regarding judicial.
Well, I have two things to maybe to say about that. One, that's one of the reasons on the agenda we have to discuss the 5-year plan, because I think that is, coming up with a plan of how we're going to approach all the different kinds of elections, because, as you look, there's, high ticket, high media ticket items on the ballot, different years, and, those drive attendance sometimes, participation, which you can build on, but then you have to deal with, elections that have, don't have the top of the ticket to maybe drive participation. But also, I think one of the differences about judicial elections is you need to educate people what,
Right.
most people don't even understand what the difference, it's like, oh, here are 4 different judicial positions, and I have no idea what the difference, I forget about who the people are, I don't even know what they do. I mean, I might have the, general idea of what an assemblyman and state senator does, but I have really no idea what the difference between a civil court judge and a, different levels of judges.
Yeah,
We just prepared a brochure that we're starting to distribute and we're starting to produce in bulk, which really, in this case, it explained what each judicial position was, what cases they oversaw, what the length of their term was, how they were either appointed or elected. And we've, at some of the community events that Onita's talking about, we've been distributing that and we're trying to get that out there much more. We're starting.
Which is the reason why we put together the October 26th event, because as soon as they were finished, we wanted to be able to jump right on top of getting the word out.
I think it's clear that judicial elections represent a unique challenge, but I'm assuming, Mr. Chairman, that no elections are excluded from our purview in terms of trying to get participation.
That would be my assumption. Perfect. Thank you very much, Anita. Next, we have a discussion of legislative proposals and of broader recommendations. Tony, would you like to lead this? Sure. And I want to thank also Tony and Shauna Davidson for taking the lead on this effort.
And Shauna, you're very welcome. Thank you. So we're gonna probably see a steady stream of pieces of legislation that are floating around the Assembly, the Senate, and the City Council. And I think it's important, and we talked about this, that it's important that we, to the extent there are some that we feel will be helpful in getting more people to vote and making it easier to vote, we should weigh in and support those measures, or maybe comment on them where that's needed. Here we have, and they're all going to be at different levels, and some of them will be something we don't want to touch because it's not fully baked, and others will be really appropriate at the time. So here we have two of them that have appeared. One of them came before us to discuss it, and the first one is, we'll take the first one, is an assembly bill introduced by Kavanaugh, and you guys should have gotten a little bit of write-up on it. And essentially this bill allows 16-year-olds to pre-register, and 17-year-olds as well, which I think they can do now already. And but the difference here is that 16-year-olds can pre-register, and if you turn 18 before the general election, this would allow you to vote in the primary. So a couple differences there. So as long as you turn 18 before the general election, you can vote in the primary, and they can pre-register 16-year-olds. And so I know we mentioned, we asked Board of Elections, because I think most people feel that anything you can do to get people registered early on, it just gets them in the system, they get more excited about it, there's a chance that they're going to become lifelong voters, and I can't see any downside other than the mechanics of it. Board of Elections, I think we talked a little bit about it at our last meeting, and they didn't seem fazed by handling that task because they're already doing it for 17-year-olds, at least pre-registering. So if that is not an impediment, I think that it seems like this one would be a very good idea. And I don't believe either one of them, unless you know, Sean, I don't know the prospects of any of these bills. They could be locked up there forever, they could never see the light of day, but occasionally we might know better on a bill that it may be more real than others. So I don't know the full prospects of this, but it seems like a very good idea, one that could certainly help get more young people involved. So that's the first bill. I don't know if you want me to go through the first and the second, and then we'll decide what we do with that. There's a second bill from the City Council introduced by Dickens. And this bill is a little bit, I would say, not as fully formed as the other one. We have more questions on it. This one actually is a bill that would require us, VAAC, to communicate with voters who self-identify, who sort of contact through the system, either give us their email or give the email to go through a website, and to communicate with them about important, significant dates relating to voter registration and voting. And I guess our biggest, one of our biggest questions was why VAAC and why not Board of Elections. And I don't even know if we can manage that. I don't know what the mechanics are for managing that. You know, there's some requirements here. We'd like to see it certainly expanded to electronic communication, not just emails, but text and whatever might be invented tomorrow, I don't know, in electronic form. You know, it requires a certain number of contacts that have to be sent. So we have a lot of questions, and we think it would be more appropriate either to have a more detailed conversation with the council member who introduced the bill, or I believe we were visited by not Citizens Union, it was it Citizens Union?
Yes.
Yeah.
Citizens Union was here, so they also could at some point talk to us more about it. So it seems like there are more questions here that we need to resolve. So I put those both out for discussion. As I said, I think the first one is more ready might be more ready for a vote. The second one might be more in need of further discussion. So put those two before everybody else. And again, thank you, Sean, for all the work and following up on it.
So with respect to the first one, the New York State Assembly Bill 7440, the Kavanaugh Bill, is there any discussion?
I just want to be certain, which should be obvious, that it's actually legal to have someone vote before their age of 18 in a primary, if then they can therefore vote in the general, if they're out of age. It just, I'm sure this has been looked at, but I'm just worth putting a very clear point on them.
I believe there would have to be election change, but I will check just to make sure.
Okay.
Well, I think that might be the answer. Let's let the Board of Elections give us a guidance. Dawn,
Yes.
you could let us know by the next meeting,
Yes.
perhaps? And
I'll
if-
let you know by tomorrow.
If John's points, we'll take it, and we can vote.
Well, maybe we should actually, assuming that it proves to be legal, can we have a vote to endorse the legislation with proviso that the paragraph be written for conformity and also that it is actually legal for the 16 rules to vote?
Well, can I make a suggestion? One, I think that, I believe that this law is actually is recommending an amendment to the state election law that would be necessary. I think that that's part of the actual proposed legislation. And two, in the general idea of whether or not this is illegal or not, to do that, I think that this law, in the initial, I don't know if you remember, but a representative of Assemblyman Kavanaugh's office came to our very first meeting, and in the materials that she presented then, this was based on a law that I think was adopted, I'm going to get the wrong state, I think North Carolina, but I don't quote my, Ohio, you say? I was like, in my mind, Ohio or North Carolina, because I chose the wrong one. So some state has actually passed this law. So, I mean, what I think we should talk a little bit about is what form we would want our, this group's, we could write a letter to Assemblyman Kavanaugh saying, yes, you have our support, but we have this, provided that, there's, it's clear that this is, permissible constitutionality, and also to, point out this inconsistency in the paragraphs, that.
Do we have
yeah.
the proposed legislation? Does anybody have a copy of it?
We did have a copy of it, we put a link to it. I can probably print out another copy. I don't have it with me right now.
Yeah, we submitted the link.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we want to encourage people, more people to register, more people to participate. It just seems like a not incidental concern, and I just want to make sure before we charge off and reverse it.
So should we vote?
I think we should, I think we should vote, and then we can, because what we're going to do is just write a letter of support, I think, if that's what you agree, it's appropriate, so it's not, you can't, it's not, that doesn't mean that if it's passed, things just are support. So if the committee is in agreement.
Any further questions or discussion? We hear a motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. So with respect to the second item, the city council proposed bill by Councilman Diggins. Tony, do you want to present the recommendation?
Yeah, I think we should have a further discussion on this one and ask, we can do it in either format. We can either have a meeting and come back, or if you want to have a representative come here and have it done that way. I don't know if there's a timing issue, I doubt it, but,
Well,
if there's a timing
I don't mean to
issue.
interrupt you, but Alex Kamara from Citizens Union, who made the presentation on this, is actually here, so
Oh, good.
if people have immediate questions, maybe I don't want to put you on the
Yeah,
spot,
yeah,
Alex, but.
Why don't we do that? So maybe we can start with a couple of questions that we've laid out here. And I guess the biggest one is that we have this set up so that VAAC would be the entity to accept emails, monitor them, and basically be the entity that responds to the public. So why does it come to VAAC and not Board of Elections, which,
So we
Management.
worked with Councilmember Dickens in drafting this bill and the council staff, and originally we had actually proposed that the board take on this task. And it was just something where, and we actually submitted a copy of the bill to the board, but it was just something where the council feels more comfortable because of the board's kind of murky status between city law and state law, that they felt they had a clearer line of authority in delegating this responsibility to VAAC rather than the Board of Elections. The Board of Elections is situated in state law. There's debate as to whether it's a city agency, a state agency, or something in between. And so that's why they felt that it was, as far as the council's authority goes, it would be best to have VAAC do this task in terms of their ability to legislate it. Operationally, what they presented when we discussed it was that in collecting emails, obviously this is something that's going to be voluntary. The board does have emails, and Dawn can correct here me if I'm wrong, but they have emails they've collected from doing events around the city. Not all of those folks are registered voters, which is what's written in the bill. So in a sense, what the council argued is you'd be starting from scratch either way, if you're at the board or at VAAC, in terms of people have to voluntarily opt in to receive these emails. So there's no advantage necessarily to the board doing this over VAAC because of that voluntary opt-in.
May I just make a statement, because as I've discussed, I do have to leave. First of all, disclosure, I'm on the board of Citizens Union. But second of all, I do think that, assuming that we have the capacity, we don't want to make promises we can't keep, I do think this is precisely the kind of thing that we should be engaging in, just not even in VAAC, but more as a city, using technology more to remind people of critical times and opportunities to vote, what their windows are. I think that's so close to our mission, as I understand it, to try to increase people's, remind people of the importance of registering, voting, and the various deadlines. It does seem that whatever entity does do it, and I'm not averse to do it, provided that we have the capacity to actually follow through, and I'm not convinced we do, that this is precisely the kind of thing that we should be encouraging.
Yeah, frankly, we're not, we're not particular as to who does it either. Whether it's the board, or whether it's VAAC, whether it's a combination of both, it's something that all the civic groups have advocated for years. Essentially, you're having an email, and we would welcome text reminders to people of upcoming election dates. And I think this year in particular, it's really important because, especially during the primary, voters get a mailer, but beyond that, the day of the election, it's not a primary that's heavily emphasized. People forget about it. Some districts didn't even have a primary. They weren't sure if they had to go and vote. I didn't even know myself, so I figure being involved in this day to day, a lot of New Yorkers are probably uncertain as to whether they're supposed to vote in these elections that don't get a lot of press. So, it's perfect for something like that.
So right now, the Board of Elections doesn't have any electronic communication with people in terms of emails or anything like that?
There's no line on the registration form for an email address, which.
So you don't have any database,
We do have a database. We started a database this year, and majority of those email addresses are poll workers, which we started collecting this year. we do not gather any emails from a registration form because there is no line on the registration form for an email address, which I believe is something that's very important and should be addressed with the state board.
So that, in terms of doing this, right now, we couldn't really rely on the Board of Elections to do this. In other words, we wouldn't have that ability. All the outreach would be sort of at the events that you do and things like that.
That's how we started to collect our email addresses from the events that we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think it was pretty much, a couple-man team, and they compiled like 16,000 emails. I don't know how long it took to get them, but they're not all registered voters, but they, you can get a lot pretty quickly. And if you have something on your website, and people can go onto the website and sign up, that's also a very quick way to get a lot of emails quickly.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of capacity, because the Campaign Finance Board would do this, would be the people who administer this law if it passed, and I don't think that there's any problem with capacity in doing that, because as Alex points out, and as Dawn has mentioned, getting people's email addresses is not a particularly difficult venture, and sending them emails is not a particularly complicated venture either. If you wanted to do something more sophisticated, obviously that would require more information. If you want to only send someone an email when they have an actual primary in their district, you'd have to know what district they're in. You'd have to know every district that has, so there, that kind of sophisticated, notification system would require a fair amount of cooperation between, if the Campaign Finance Board did it, would require a fair amount of cooperation between the Campaign Finance Board and the Board of Elections anyways, because we would need to have the detailed information that comes from your, like the information that you're going to have in your, no, I'm not thinking,
Well, we have
the online ballot,
Right.
where do I vote, and that the
We
online
have that
ballot's
right
gonna,
now, the 1 hour.
yeah.
Somebody can go in and put their address in,
Yeah.
and it will tell them where they can go. And
Yeah.
their
Mhm.
ED, their AD, all that.
Yeah, but when they have that project that I guess it will come soon, where you actually get the copy of your ballot.
We actually, I guess this will be the first
I'm
announcement,
sorry,
but
I didn't
DOJ
mean to
did
out you.
approve us today
Oh,
at
good.
4:56 PM.
Oh, good, okay.
So we will be going live. We will be having a press conference first with Councilwoman Brewer and Citizens Union. They were a tremendous help, and do it as well, Commissioner Post.
Mhm.
So we're very pleased
Mhm.
that this is happening. Not only will they be informed for a primary, if there is a race in their district, but they will be able to view the ballot. They will be able to enlarge the font of the ballot on the computer. There's no track mark, so it will not be able to be scanned. So we're thrilled. We're very happy that this will be up for the general election.
I just have one or two items on. So, and I don't have it in front of me, there was a notification requirement, multiple notifications. Can you remind me of what that was? I don't recall.
I'm trying to recall myself. So there was multiple notifications, so it wouldn't just be kind of the day of the quote-unquote significant date, but I think it was 3 business days prior and then 10 business days prior. So the idea being, for example, if there was a deadline associated with submitting a deadline for voter registration to be able to vote in the next election. If you had voluntarily provided your email, you would be notified 10 days prior to that deadline, and then again 3 days prior. So I think there were 2 emails that would go out.
Actually, 3.
There were three.
Then there's one on the
Yeah,
actual
then there's
day of
one
the
on the
election.
actual day of the deadline. So it was everything from, election day itself, which I think people need less of a reminder for, except for these minor type elections. But a lot of the deadlines are what people forget about, to register, to get an absentee ballot, things like that, that, we don't have same-day registration in this city. We don't have early voting, and so folks aren't aware sometimes until election day that they forgot to register. So this would let them know in advance.
So for me, from my standpoint, I was under this impression that some of this was being done already by Board of Elections, and given that it's not really part of what they're doing, it matters less in terms of who does it, and if mechanically, if there's no objection from from VAAC or about either collecting or the requirements of, and that's something that I leave to you guys, the requirements of notification 3 times, then, I think it's important that the more contacts that people get to remind them, they're good. It's just a matter of if VAAC is fine with handling that, then clearly it's not being done right now, so I think it would make sense.
When Tony and I were talking about this, one of the concerns or questions came up with is, in what format is the Board of Elections database? I mean, yes, you can get the email or the Twitter phone or whatever, not phone, whatever Twitter is on, or, a text messaging. The concern was, is this another parameter that can be put in an already built database? Like, that was how the question as we were approaching it, as to why it's in the CFB as opposed to the Board of Elections. If there's already a database that has the first name, last name, address, ED, AD, that would have to be built from scratch to just add this one more piece of information if it's at the CFB. And that was my really big concern, was that this is just one piece of information in a long string that you have to know about each person. And so I don't know enough about the Board of Elections database and how easy it is to take that and add to it. And I think it would be most beneficial if we could do the information back and forth, feed this parameter into a Board of Elections. There is a complete voter database, if you would, is what Tony and I were talking about when we were thinking about the questions that we wanted to raise at this meeting when we talked to you.
I would have to find out from LMAS department.
Are those emails a matter of public record?
No, our emails, like I said, there is no email address on the voter registration form. What we have obtained is through the events, the poll worker recruitment events that we did during the year. We have something called the Election Connection. What we do is send out, I believe it's quarterly, a newsletter to people that have given their email address to our recruitment program. But there is nowhere on the registration, so we do not, I don't think it would be, or I would have to find out the legal if we can get that out.
Yeah, one of the other, concerns that, it's not a minor concern, is that having this database of information in a public agency could lead it to be foilable. And so someone could get, a request and get this database, because if it's exists, then it is, there's the ability to foil it. And so that piece of information would have to be, no matter what, I would not ask people to give me their email address without telling them that there was the potential that someone could foil it. Not for business purposes, because there's an exception in FOIL for that, but, they can't FOIL information for commercial purposes, but, for whatever other reason.
That's the reason for it not being on the registration.
Not for a commercial, what? Yeah.
That's a great database for a candidate.
Yeah.
But I think it really depends on how specific you want those emails to be. If it's just the deadline for election, then I guess you wouldn't have to tie it to that individual's
To a voter
address
database.
and you could have it, or if it was something that the board were, I guess we don't want to take it back to the commissioners. If it was something they were interested in opting into, then we could have something more of a generic, the deadline is, and visit the board's website to find out your particular poll site or to see your ballot.
Yeah, because that's what I was saying, and when I talked about that, it depends on how, if we send this email to everybody, register to vote, and it may, at some point you might get annoyed. I am registered to vote, why don't you people know that? And, so it's, so you might do overkill,
Right.
like in trying to give information, but, if you don't do the targeting,
Right.
to make sure that you're, okay. And if your email says, go to the Board of Elections website to look at this great poll, now the ballot, that you're going to have electronic ballot, then you're going to have to go 2 places. And
Right.
I don't know, so
think
it's
there
something to
can-
think
there
about.
can, as far as those concerns, There might be a way to put, when you send the email, because I noticed I've gotten them commercially to opt out.
Yeah.
They can click a certain
Right.
button where they can opt out of receiving any further emails.
They'll opt in and then they'll opt out. Yeah.
Right, you could have a scenario where someone is registered and then they don't want to receive certain notifications pertaining to registering, that they
Yeah.
would want to know about absentee ballots
Right.
or,
Yeah.
elections. So,
We
yeah, I
have,
mean, the more you can tailor it, the better.
Yeah, so-
With regard to the FOIL question, I haven't looked at that in great detail, but I know there are protections in state law and the open meetings law that protects private information. Now, whether emails submitted for email notifications would be private, I'm not sure, I'd have to look at it, but there are definitely privacy protections in the open meetings law and the FOIL laws.
I just had a question, because I know that the other part of this was also the text messaging portion of it. And the voter registration forms do ask for phone numbers. And I know sometimes people put home numbers, or sometimes they'll put cell phone numbers. Is that something that is usable at this point?
That's a very good question.
I would have to,
We have to-
I would have to take that.
As the bill's drafted, no, because you would want someone to voluntarily opt in. I mean, they haven't provided that information under the understanding that they would then receive text messages from anyone. So
Right,
I think-
incur charges of sending.
Yeah, I think just in the interest of being fair, you would have to get their permission first.
I think this is something I'm going to take back to legal. We do have email addresses from absentee voters, especially overseas. But we did notice last year, I don't know exactly how many there were, but we did have, when we did an email notification at the time before the general, that there were a lot that bounced back. I would have to check with legal though about this, because that's a very good point about a FOIL request and giving someone's email address out. I think that might be a glitch, but I'm gonna check. I will check and get back to you.
That's just like a fundamental piece of information. Alex, this is where is this bill in process right now?
So it was drafted in June. It's in the Governmental Operations Committee. I think there's at least some degree of support for it in the council. That being said, I don't think it's going to be placed on the schedule for the committee in the next month or two. So I don't think there's anything that would prevent further examination by this board.
When you came out and appeared before us last time, there was specific commenting about text messaging in particular.
Right.
And was, I'm just curious as to, the current version of the bill doesn't mention text messaging or any other form of electronic communication. Can you discuss a little about what happened that led to this being about email only?
So, I mean, that was just the way it was drafted by the council. I don't think anyone thought about text messaging, including myself or the council drafters when they did so. But I mean, what we're really looking to do is to get to a hearing stage, because, we're open to all the amendments everyone suggested. I mean, we support the general concept of electronic communications to the New York City residents about elections and all dates pertaining to it, and whether it's administered by the board or the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, whether it includes text or not. I mean, those are things that we all, we're flexible on or we welcome. Generally, we're hopeful that it gets to the committee stage, the various groups and stakeholders can go and give their best thinking on it, and we can get the best bill possible.
Great. Any further questions or discussion? Great. Thanks so much, Alex.
Thank you.
And I think there's no action needed at this time. So we can move on to the next item. Town hall update. All right. So let me go to my handy dandy iPad. But I think there are a lot of thank yous, too many to count, but I think the people who have really spent a lot of time on this, Eliza Pilson from my staff, who's sitting over there, thank you very much. Eric Friedman and Lorna Kramer. Thank you very much for all of your work. And I just would like to also thank Jim Colgan and Jed Alpert from Mobile Commons, because they've been very, very active and really instrumental in bringing a lot of the pieces together. And then we also have an advisory committee that has really put in a number of hours, and also the Ford Foundation has hosted these meetings, and so it's received some good support. But just to kind of go into more detail, put it in the context of people who haven't been part of this before. The idea was that rather than being in a typical format where it would be those of us in this format sitting up here at a podium on stage, asking people from the public to come up one at a time and give their testimony, generally prepared, but then to actually turn it up on its head and actually say, well, what would happen if the people of New York City had an opportunity to be able to speak their minds, and to do so in a setting where somebody who has spent his career really trained and perfecting the art of encouraging people to give their informed opinions or personal opinions, but also encouraging dialogue between the people in the audience. What would that do, and what would that be like? So what we came up with was this idea of having something which would be like everybody's dream of what a town hall could really be like. To have a representative cross-section of New Yorkers in one place, in an open setting, where everybody in New York could connect to this via radio, the live radio, via online, participate in Twitter streams, text message streams, and be able to participate in this conversation which is happening at the people level, not necessarily at the board level. And what we've done is, so thanks to WNYC, we now have this event which is scheduled for November 1st in the green space at 10 a.m. The green space right now seats 140 people, so it is not unlimited seating. But the idea is that people will have a representative cross-section of New Yorkers in the space, so that everybody in New York City will be able to participate live via all the forms of digital communication available to us today. Brian Lair Show will have a central group of 10 to 15 guests who will be there to really prime the conversation. But Brian and the rest of the WNYC staff will work very hard to make sure that the entire audience is engaged in this conversation. The Campaign Finance Board and the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee will be pulling together also a list of special guests to attend this. We're working on an invitation to be released in the near future. For press, Eric and Lona have already been working with WNYC's folks to coordinate the press releases. We are proceeding toward the idea of a joint press release, and I think which is very exciting, right? I think it's very good. It will be circulated among all of the collective press contacts. So we hope that this will get a lot of attention. The event will not be branded independently at this time. The idea was to try to elicit this sort of unfiltered conversation about why people don't vote, and then to use that as really the kickoff point for determining what this would actually become. What would we call this? How would this be constituted, and how would this be put out? We're going to use an NYC Votes infrastructure, Twitter handles, hashtags, etc., Facebook page, email addresses. There will be some way for people to opt in via email on the WNYC page and on the Campaign Finance Board Voter Assistance Advisory Committee page. We'll be collecting those email addresses, combining them, and we'll also be collecting the cell phone numbers for people who actually opt in on a fully permissioned basis to receiving messages about future communications regarding this. A lot of these things are going to happen via text messaging, and I think as we've all pointed out, One of the big impetuses here is to get folks who don't vote and who may actually be less enabled via email and the web to be able to participate in a meeting that they're comfortable with. So again, Mobile Commons is helping us with the text messaging infrastructure, and they've had a lot of experience getting folks in the grassroots to be able to be activated. This will not be treated at this point as an official public hearing. There are a couple key elements that this will not meet the requirements of, including the date. We think that the event prior to the general election will be important in helping to raise awareness and place attention on the general election. But the idea is that we're going to stimulate that interest, and then we'll use it as a hearing to be able to compile responses and have a more formal setting, hearing in a setting like this. Any questions or comments?
Wonderful so far. What are you doing about building the audience? The guests who will be there, how will they be invited? And by whom and under what auspices? And is this going to be part of the press information that Eric and Verona are going to be presenting as part of the package with NYC?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think just to put an important point in a way that I know is near and dear to your heart.
Yes,
This is a Voter Assistance Advisory Committee event,
thank you.
along with the Campaign Finance Board, and WNYC is hosting this and adding their resources and talent to making this a great event.
Yeah, I just want to comment, because I think that this is a difficult task to do. Putting something like this together, it's very different. We're not sure how all of it's going to go, but I do want to say that, you've brought in, the thing that's really exciting about it is that you've brought in a lot of the private sector here, a lot of contacts and a lot of folks who are excited, who come together very excited, want to do something like this. And, I think it's really an amazing job to pull this together. We haven't been around that long. We're still, finding this new board, at least finding ourselves and figuring out all our issues. And, it just dawned on me tonight when you mentioned judicial elections that, yeah, we got to get to those. But there's so much to be done. But I think that this is a great start. It's changing the way we are focusing on this. It could be a whole different direction to go in. And I think the biggest thing is the fact that the private sector is at the table here willing to help for free. So that's a big difference in how we can do things, and we can leverage so much more than just us here, because we know we're not going to have the resources to do something like this. And Brian Lehrer is great to have on board. There's no way it's not going to be really good if he's running it. So thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I think it's clear from the folks just a couple blocks away and all over the country and all over the world that there's no better time to be doing this right now. So thank you all for your support and being part of this. Shall we move on to our next item? And just one note, you did ask about how this will be promoted. WNYC will be promoting this on air and on their website.
Good.
So there will be quite a bit of exposure to this. In terms of metrics, we're still working on this, but I think we can safely say that our impressions should be in the tens of thousands. Easily. So I think we'll be setting some new records for our outreach to our community. Thanks to WNYC and everybody working on this. Okay, next. December public hearing. Who would like to provide that update?
There's not really just much to say, except for that we hope to build on the excitement that, this Brian Lehrer town hall, hosted town hall, and bring those the people who are interested in, all the information we get from them, to have a public hearing that is really, really engaging the public. As you know, the charter requires this committee to hold a public hearing between the dates of the general election and I believe December 21st. And so the public hearing is scheduled for Monday, December 12th. We thought we'd get out of this building, although we were not so successful in finding a place far away, but hopefully it's a little, at least it's different, that the Borough of Manhattan Community College has offered to let us use their space at 199 Chamber Street. So we'll have I guess, a public meeting of the committee and then have the hearing immediately following to discuss whatever business we have and to hear what the public has to say about voting. It's 5 o'clock. Did I not say that? Sorry. Okay. At 5 p.m.
What's the date?
It's Monday, December 12th at 5 p.m. Yeah.
Question on that. What, if any, capacity will you have at the hearing to receive comments or thoughts via email, Facebook, Twitter, etc.?
We're trying to figure out. BMCC doesn't really have the facilities to do it like the Green Space does, but we're hopefully going to work on it because we'll maybe be able to have people, email into our office computers. We'll try and figure out a way to do that. It probably won't be this year, unfortunately, as elaborate as the town hall at the Green Space, but we're going to keep improving at every meeting.
Don't give up hope yet.
Yeah, we'll work on it, but I'm not sure, it's like but hopefully we'll be able to do at least some things.
And, your staff will work with my team and we can.
Yeah, we'll work on it.
Terrific. Mission statement. Whose sign was that?
Well, I guess after the last meeting, we had drafted, staff here, Shauna and Onita, and actually a whole bunch of us.
I'm sorry, but can I just ask a question
Sure.
before we move on? How is the public going to be alerted to the December hearing?
Well, we do press releases. We have, Onita has a sort of vast email list of contacts. We'll do our typical media advisories for this and all the emails that we've gotten. But if you wanted to email your groups, we would be happy to send us our material and send them to you. Send out the material early enough so you can send them to your
Connection, we
Yeah.
can mention it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, the spotlight for the spotlight that we mentioned for the local Law 29 agencies that they have on their websites. That'll be one of the spotlights.
And also the public hearing will be announced at the November 1st event, and
Yes.
WNYC will also announce it.
No, okay. So anyway, so I guess the last meeting we presented a draft mission statement, and we received some feedback from this group and my notes from that meeting suggested that we focus, make more prominent the mission of voter engagement, and also make sure that we specifically mention the use of new technology in the mission statement. So we have attempted to redraft the mission statement to hopefully try and accomplish those two things. And I don't know if people have comments about that. Once the group has agreed on the mission statement, it will go on the website page that is dedicated to the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee.
Does anybody have any comment? Okay. So I would like to have an opportunity
Okay.
to
spend more
take a
time.
cut at this.
Okay, sure, fine.
I think that this is, given the importance of our mission and the importance of our time, this time in history, I think we deserve to have a mission statement that is very compelling.
Absolutely.
And so if I could, I would like to take a draft.
Okay, sure.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is discuss development of a 5-year plan.
And the main objective to discussion, obviously we're not going to develop a 5-year plan sitting here tonight, unless you want to sit over 5 years. But I guess it's sort of to try and, as Tony, so graciously agreed to help us with our legislative proposals, try and come up with we have a working group to do the town hall and our digital project, whether we can try and get some interest in having a working group to meet to try and project, this cyclical flow of elections and what we plan to do. Onita has a good model of the template of what we did for the Queen's election and is working on kind of projecting that out, but it would be helpful to know what the group would like to do and what kinds of programs people would like to see over the course of 5 years so that we can get ahead of the game a little bit. I don't know if anybody's willing to work on that with us. You don't need to commit now. We'll hopefully. That's just putting that idea out so people can think about it.
Involved in it.
Okay.
I would like to be involved.
And I think that the right place to start is trying to figure out where we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where we want to be is probably a quantitative and a qualitative place. How do we measure success? What are those benchmarks? How do we define it? Is it measured by increasing engagement? Is it across all demographics, or is it just in absolute numbers? Do we have a notion for where our role of technology should be? Do we think that there should be a measurable qualitative difference in people's interaction with the civic process? And those are things I think that are very, very important. And I think, saying that we can have a picture of what we want this to do in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years will make it much easier to work backwards from that. Incrementally building it up from now to some point in the future is not going to be the way that we're going to succeed.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need a plan because we're sort of going along right now without a real blueprint and discovering things as we go along and realizing that, we should be thinking about that. And Art mentions something that I'm not sure of yet, which is how are we going to measure success, which I think you start with that and work, everything goes backwards from there. Is you got to figure out what are we looking to accomplish, and it's debatable. It's very debatable as to what measures success in this area, but we should be having some conversations around that, and a plan is a good place to do it.
Yeah, that is mainly my goal. Because this is the mission of this group could be so expansive, and you could wind up doing great things. Every single thing you did was great, but at the end of the day, you did so many disparate things that you didn't move towards an actual goal. And so, I think Art is right. You have to figure out what that goal is and then move backwards. But sort of having a cohesive whole. Not that every event is exactly the same, but that you actually see where each project fits into the larger plan.
I think the timing of this is on target because of the town hall meeting. And I think that maybe we should pay particular attention to the measure of success that we attribute to the November 1st event, and use that in all of its glory to be the first in a series of footprints that we can use to determine if we are this successful this year, and it isn't even the first part of the 5-year plan. What else can we do?
In my mind, I would like this to be one of the key parts of the report that is required to be produced in April. Maybe not completely all, full-fledged out, but at least, the starting points, what goals we hope to achieve.
Well, I think it'd be important also to get, it'd be great to get the people of New York to tell us what they think would be successful.
Definitely.
Yes.
Where we should be the vehicle for making that happen.
Yes.
Do you want any type of survey maybe up on your website where they can maybe send their ideas into?
Well, the hearing is supposed to be the first of that effort, and we'll see how people want to engage. The web traffic to the CFP website is not tremendous, right? And, the question is, if you're going to create something which is really for the people and by the people, about the people, then the website should also have that same feel and responsiveness. But we're not sure what that it is yet. Hopefully we'll know in a few weeks.
Yep.
I have a better sense of it. Good. Okay, is there any other business? If not, then I would like to since we've gone to public comment period, is there anybody from the public who'd like to come up and say anything?
I'm Barbara Zucker from the Women's City Club. Listening to what you're saying about wanting to get feedback.
I'm just trying to make sure you're on.
There's a button on this.
Do you hear it?
No, it's not on. There's a button.
It says on. It says it's got power.
There
There we go.
Okay. Listening to what you're saying about wanting to get feedback and at the December meeting, if you want to get more people to come, I belong to an organization where we follow these things, we know, but maybe notices could be handed out at the polling booths when people leave or at the time they register, pre-printed notices telling them about the December 1st meeting and urging them either to come or to send letters or to text, or, unless you say that you're going to be overwhelmed electronically. I don't really know about that. But that's a wonderful time to catch people because you're either happy or you're frustrated. We're often the latter, well, it's one reason or another. And unfortunately, this is a very light voting year, so I don't think, we're not voting for much, so I don't think there'll be very much of a turnout, but still it's a good beginning. It'll be wonderful to do it every year to remind people when they can come and give their impressions back to them.
That's very good. Thank you so much.
Dawn?
Yes.
I have a question about what was just presented. It used to be in the past that we had to be very careful with handing out any literature by a poll station because it's considered electioneering. And I know you have to be a certain distance away and all of that, so I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Well, I would think that would be if you were handing out anything about a candidate. This has nothing to do with any candidates. I don't see why it would be an issue. Electioneering is 100 feet from the door. Usually when you go to a poll site, you usually see signs posted. Those postings are set up 100 feet from the entrance. This has nothing to do with anybody that's on the ballot.
So as
I
long as
don't
it's
see
not
why
included?
there would be any reason why you couldn't.
Okay, because I think we were told something before that was different. But also, another request that we had made in the past was, is it possible to have literature of our own packaged with the poll station materials that could be posted inside? Such as this, coming to a public hearing or annual meeting, that could be posted inside the poll station.
I can let you know. Okay. I know.
Waiting very patiently, thank you.
My name is Bob McFeely. Just a little about myself. I used to sit on your side for 16 years. I am currently employed at the Staten Island Borough President's Office as the MIS Director, so I'm a computer guy at the office. I came up with this new idea for you to make Election Day 2012 more efficient and easier for the voters. Every 20 years, a convergence of reapportionment and a presidential election occurs. Presidential elections are harder for the poll workers because it is the election with the greatest turnout of the 4-year cycle. Reapportionment causes for all the AD/ED numbers to be changed due to the census. This causes for the voters to be unsure of their new election district. Many voters just return to the same location as last year, which may or may not be their correct ED. However, with the event of having new voting scanning machines, voters do not have to place their ballots in a specific scanner as they did with the old lever machines. Poll sites can now be organized by alphabetical order. So instead of having the books by AD/ED. You could do an A to C, a D to F, a G to, and so on. This would have two benefits for election day. Every voter would already be able to find their table to go to because it would be based on their last name. The Board of Elections would be able to save money because the door clerk or the information clerk, the person that would look up in the street finder what AD and ED they would look up, go to, would not be needed to look up. Each election table would have to give a voter a correct ballot vote based on the style for the voter, based on the AD/ED. My suggestion on this would be that have in the voter registration list, next to the voter's signature, a letter indicating which ballot to give. One of the reasons why I'm suggesting this is because sometimes it still has to be based on AD/ED, but sometimes the numbers are very close, and you may have, let's say, AD 60 and then ED 61, and then right next door, the opposite, the transverse on it. So if you just give it by every letter, A, B, C, D, it makes it a lot easier for the poll worker to just give out, and it follows also the alphabetical order of the idea on the proposal. To follow up on the Board of Elections promotional campaign, mark it, scan it, vote the new way, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. The promotional campaign could be finding your ballot to vote is as easy as ABC. I think this would be of a lot of help, and I know that in reapportionment years, it causes a big problem on people finding where to go and where to vote. One of my other proposals, which I didn't give to you, but it's been a pet peeve of mine over the last many years, is that I wanted the legislation to, all elected officials, when they do their mailings, have the mailing come back to the Board of Elections. Because with like my principal does, he does a mailing and he does mailings out to voters. And I would get all these returns of these people who are no longer living at these addresses. And the Board of Elections only does one mail check a year in August. And it's in the multi-language, different form. And most people don't return that. They just toss it. This way, it's a no-cost feature that every elected official, when they do their mailing things, have just a mail return in the corner saying, instead of coming back to the elected official, have it go back to the Board of Elections and allow that as a mail check for the Board of things. It's still the post office doing the delivery, but it requires legislation by the Assembly and the Senate to allow for the multiple mail checks. I was just recently informed about 2 weeks ago, there's a new chairman for the Assembly Committee, Mike Cusick, who's now he's a Staten Islander, and he is looking for ideas and things to do to improve the election system since his new committee. So maybe you might want to invite him as part of the legislative things. I'm sure he would be more than welcome to come down. I gave him these two proposals, but they're not public yet. I wanted you guys to have it first.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
These are very, let me see if anybody has any questions. These are very elegant and common sense solutions, and I would think Staten Island is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
But there are obviously lots of practical issues, and I think Dawn is probably the best person to address them from the Board of Elections purview. Obviously, as you know, it's complicated. There's state laws and there are different jurisdictions represented at this table, in fact. So Dawn, I don't know if you want to have an opportunity to...
Well, I'd like to take what he handed out here, take a look at it and discuss it with legal and a few other departments. But just to rectify something, which you stated, no need for information clerk or door clerk.
I didn't know which one you guys used, but the
Okay,
one that
well, we
looks up
use
the
both.
poll.
So I think it's important because being in this position for over a year, I don't really believe that the public knows what the Board of Elections does all year. They think it's a 2-day year work, and it's by all means, it is not. And just listening to what you said, just, the light bulb goes off to say, well, a door clerk, we need door clerks, especially where there are problems with accessibility. Information clerks are definitely needed. I would not think that these are positions that we can do away with. The Board of Elections is in the process of reviewing Article 9 of election law, We have been in the process for quite some time. Now, Article 9 is basically the end of the night, closing procedures. I know there has been quite a bit of newspaper articles which states that we're doing things the archaic way. We are, but we have to go by election law. And when the state board decided to pick 2 vendors, and we were given 2 vendors to choose from, they also should have taken into consideration the election law that needed to be changed to accommodate the many different aspects of voting, and that was not done.
To comment on regards to the things, that you're going to have a huge problem also next year. With the tabulation of the.
Exactly,
right,
well,
and
we
that's-
are working on it. You know, we are piloting a program in Queens, and this program, if and only if we can get legislation changed to go along with this pilot, will it be successful? If our poll workers still have to sit there, although the police department is picking up that PMD and taking it to a Board of Election facility to download the results in minute time, you know, but our poll workers are still stuck at the polling place, cutting and pasting, it's a waste of time.
Just to give a little info on regards to that. When they close the poll, the machine actually does not count the ballots until the poll worker goes and sets it, and then it starts the tabulation by ADED, and that printout doesn't come out for at least 20, 30 minutes, depending on.
No.
It did the last time election this year.
No, absolutely not. It doesn't take 20 or 30 minutes to do a printout. I think the whole closing process is time consuming, and the whole closing process is the tabulation of other ballots where you have, that need to be scanned, which were emergency ballots. The closing procedure is quite simple as far as closing the machine down and getting your tally sheet. It is the procedure which is in election law under Article 9, which states that these poll workers need to cut these sheets, tabulate, and put it onto a return of canvas. Now, in other parts of the state, where they have only 1 scanner at a poll site, they don't need to use their return of canvas. But because we report by election district, and because our commissioners decided that they didn't want a chance just having 1 scanner at a poll site, and decided to put 2 and go according to the amount of voters, we have to use the return of canvas. The thing is, here are the issues. We need to change the reporting by election district. We need to change, once we do that, that'll decrease the amount of poll workers that we have at our sites. Because according to election law, there is a certain amount of poll workers per ED. So there is a lot that needs to be changed, and the board has been addressing these issues for quite some time. I would say right after the general election of last year, we started to address these issues. But as everyone here is well aware, we can't just say this is what we want to change and it's done. It takes a lot of work, and I believe that we have been working with many agencies and good government groups to have a louder voice. We were up in Albany, I believe it was May 10th, Legislative Day, and we hosted a brunch. And we went to meet with different elected officials to talk about the change in the primary. Things cannot happen overnight. It takes time. And we had our mission, and our mission were the ballots on the web and a few other new implementations that we wanted to do, and we succeeded this year. And I want to applaud the Board of Elections, the 351 employees citywide that we have, for the job that they did do, and they are going to continue to do. It's not an easy task, especially when your hands are tied to a certain extent.
Right, I do agree, and the press comes, I know they usually are blasting you guys all the time today after election day for not having results, when you can't have results because you gotta get the absentee ballots back, which don't occur until 2 weeks later. You could take a lot of hits that you don't deserve, and I've been, when I was on the other side, I absolutely said you did not take hits. And one other comment I just remembered, I was actually at the board today, and I submitted my son's voter registration form, and he is 17, and his birth date is February 24th, so he will be eligible to vote for the presidential primary, but the form will be in, he won't be able to collect signatures or anything along those lines, but it will automatically activate after his birthday. So they do allow 17-year-olds to register, and as soon as you become 18, then you are eligible to vote. Just to give you that information.
Well, I will address this, and
Well, like I said, I am talking to Mike Cusick and the delegation from Staten Island. They are interested in this.
Well, thank you. I think it highlights the need to make the entire voting process actually
It's important that
transparent to people. Like, I think
our public meetings are every Tuesday at 1:30, and I'm sure Alex from Citizens Union could attest to this. We are very public. And our website has our minutes, which was one of our goals this year, that they are up to date and on the web, which they have been for the public to read. So, we invite anybody from the public, anyone here, everyone is welcome. And I think that when you do come to these meetings, you have a better idea of what goes on at the Board of Elections.
I think it might be actually a good idea to do some kind of infographic that actually lays out the arcane pieces of what has to happen during the voting process. Because this is not the first time this issue has come up.
We have that. As a matter of fact, our Queens borough office invited the city council. They had a big conference, and they invited the public. And it is laid out, which is, we also submitted it in one of our hearings, where it's step by step of everything that is done at the board. When you hand in a registration, it's not just, okay, here's the registration. There's a process, and there's many people involved in that process.
No, I just want to thank Board of Elections. You guys have been to all of our meetings. You've always had representation, and it's helpful because sometimes, almost every meeting, we have questions, and we're able to speak to you directly and find out, is this possible? Can we do this? Or how is it done? So it's really helpful to have you guys at our meetings because invariably we have tons of questions that relate to what you do.
And also remember, I'm a phone call away, so if anybody ever needs anything, just feel free to call.
Very good. So, are there any other comments from the public? If not, then I think I'll take a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing contracts and other kinds of financial information related to the activities of the Voter Systems Advisory Committee. All in favor? Okay. Thank you very much. So, yes, do I need to? We don't need to move to go back into public session. Okay. So, so we entertain a motion to come out of executive session?
No, you don't actually need to do it.
Okay, so the executive session has been adjourned, no votes were taken, no decisions were made. And do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you very much.